Hello and welcome to the Empower Couples podcast, where here you get modern, non-boring relationship advice for you and your partner to communicate like pros, fight smarter, and stay on the same team no matter the challenge that you face. I am one of your hosts, Aaron Freeman.
And I'm Jocelyn Freeman, but you all just know us as the Freemans.
And this episode is about being an even better team in this new year. Here we are at the end of the year. And a lot of this is going to come from you hearing our own reflections on our biggest wins and challenges. And our hope is that you can take away the underlying principles. Maybe you can take some of the lessons learned from our own challenges, and maybe you can avoid some of those, right?
I think one of the biggest things that we connect on is the fact that we reflect and we look for, even in the hardship, what was the wisdom gleaned? How did we become even better as individuals and as partners? And also, let's celebrate the wins. We don't want to just, turn the calendar and get back into autopilot and do just more of the same. There may be things that you need to make adjustments on to either get back on track with how you want to live as a couple, or there might be new goals that you need to focus on or personal shifts that you need to make to be an even better partner. So you're going to take away a lot, and I think you're going to really enjoy the categories that we provide so that you can reflect on them. Now, before we go into them, and I'm excited to hear Aaron's shares, right? His reflections.
Because we selected the categories, but we didn't necessarily tell each other what the subjects of those were going to be.
Exactly. But this is time sensitive, okay? So the day that this is coming out is the day before the beginning of the Best of Us Couples Challenge. It's the special edition 30-day Couples Challenge that we created really because so many of you asked for it, right? We've had over 36,000 couples do our previous couples challenges, and we were constantly getting requests to make another round of prompts, which is a good sign because you enjoyed the prompts. But the focus of this round is a bit different. The whole intention of the way we designed the prompts is to bring out the best in each other and your relationship. Think about that. How do we shift our actions, our attitudes, and the way we express appreciation so that we bring out the best in each other? And we are focusing a bit more on intimacy in this challenge, both emotional and physical, to reignite the spark in your partnership. So you can tell we're hyped about it. Literally thousands and thousands of couples are signed up from around the world already. They're flying in almost every minute. We're seeing registrations come in.
And just to be clear, these prompts are also very specific to the energy, the focus of a new year. Mm-hmm. So this is only going to be a challenge for January 2025.
Yep.
And then we'll be back to the other challenges, but we are just focusing. This is your only opportunity to be a part of the Best of Us.
And then we'll close it, and you'll have to wait till January 2026. And you don't want to wait. So go to mycoupleschallenge.com/best. The link will also be in the show notes, but truly do not miss it. We're excited about it. We're doing it ourselves.
And so let's move into the topic here as we reflect ourselves. Hopefully you take away some of the lessons learned, the wisdom. And even as we haven't said much about this, even as we move into this next year, we're going to be writing a new book. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be a ways out, but start to know that that's coming. Should I give the title?
No. Okay. Keep it a secret.
All right.
It's good though.
But we're really thinking more about what are the real, at least the way I'm thinking of it, what's the real fundamental for a marriage? Mm-hmm. And it is that a marriage is able to be adaptive. Mm-hmm. And that means that both individuals have to learn what their patterns are individually that contribute to different dynamics, whether it's in conflict, whether it's just keeping unmet needs from happening, whether it's lowering satisfaction in the marriage. And each individual really needs to come to the table, and it has to come from reflecting, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why this is an important episode and part of the year. And you have to be willing for yourself to say, there are certain things that I'm doing. There are patterns of actions, of reactions, even patterns of thoughts, patterns of attitude that do not serve the marriage. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean that at some point they didn't benefit, but yet that's why it's adaptive. You have to look at what season are we in? What are the key things for my partner in terms of needs? obviously yours too, but you have to look at what's not working anymore.
Mm.
Or if we reestablish what our vision is, then probably my patterns are not going to help serve this new vision. We'd stay on one path when we want to be on another path.
So we need to adapt.
We need to adapt. And so I think adaptation is such a key thing that's often missed in marriage. And so that's the part for the individual. Then together, you have to also look at what are the external circumstances and stressors that we both have faced together as a married couple. Maybe some of them came about because of maybe poor decisions we made, some of them out of your control, couldn't have seen them coming.
Circumstances, stress.
And you have to look at those, and maybe a lot of those have to do with parenting and finances, right? It's certainly the place I think that those stressors or circumstances show up for us. And maybe even the development ultimately of your spiritual life as well. But you have to look at those together and say, how do we get better?
Yeah.
So that we can better handle those situations of parenting, of finances, or development of our spiritual life for this next year. So that's the context here. And how we're going to share, how we're going to reflect ourselves are from 4 categories, 4 P's. We're going to share a perspective, challenge, and then win that we each have, a personal, a parenting, and a partnership.
I love how you always stick with the letters. You're good at that.
I think we listen to enough podcasts to know that alliteration or some type of acronym, it just helps us all remember. So I'll start here, and this is the perspective one. Now, coming off of the hard end of 21 and 22, which you've heard us talk about if you've been a listener for a while, we got the big overall lesson. But I see that for myself, there has been a change in me being more pessimistic and prone to look at potential negative in the future rather than me have more appreciation and gratitude in the now. And I don't know exactly why. I mean, I won't go into a long story about that renovation, that me being a construction manager, like all that. I mean,
almost
you guys
losing
know that story.
everything.
Almost losing everything, having a 1-year-old, thinking that as in the role that I am for our marriage, that we could have potentially been on the street. Now, we wouldn't have, because I think we have good enough friends that would have invited us in, but that's where I was with that, right? And so coming out of that, there was a real lesson learned about that. However, I did, and I felt that over the year, I've just been more on the lookout for problems. Like, what's the problem here? I'm a little more pessimistic. I will be more negative. I'll maybe verbalize more judgment or comparison, or I might speak to a subject that you bring up from, that's probably not going to be something we should do. Maybe more quick to disregard your opinions or ideas. And then ultimately, I do feel that my attitude, and I think the personality trait would be neuroticism, right? The tendency to experience negative emotion. And I think personality traits always go up and down, but my neuroticism does seem like it's higher than it's been. And so I don't know that I've necessarily transformed that in 24. I think I have this opportunity to close that chapter. And so that's really what I'm taking into 25 is, there's that term out there being delusional optimism. But it's something in that realm. It's either with appreciation for what I have now. It's maybe a delusional optimism. It's even just seeing that we're always taken care of and just relating more to situations in the present rather than look out for some avoidance of a future issue.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I don't have the win, I would say, from this, but I do have enough awareness, and I'm now taking the steps to make that change, and that's not my focus for 25.
Before I do my share, I just want to really acknowledge that point about awareness, because one thing I'm really grateful about with you as a partner is that you're humble enough to acknowledge when there's something to work on, right? Like if I were to come to you and be like, hey, I feel like you've just been, I would say it in other words, but like more negative, or just not your positive self. Like you wouldn't be like, no way, you're wrong. I'm fine. I'm just stressed. Like you would take an honest look. You would say, oh, thanks for sharing that observation. Let me take a look. Let me reflect on that. And so I feel like you have a good dose of humility and willingness and being introspective. So thank you for being that kind of partner.
All right. Are we
And
going to say something?
yeah.
I don't feel like I'll look at it within a day.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here. If that's the way it comes off for you,
Yeah.
I'm glad. I think there is something to say that I'll reflect later and then really try to look. I don't know that I've been the best. When you said, hey, you're being more negative, I just want to be honest with everyone here. In that exact moment, I don't think I am like, you're
Thank
probably
you.
right. Thank you. I just, I might be a little dismissive of that. Hey, no, probably not. But I'll always, to your point, I
Yeah.
appreciate it. I always will the next morning or, mornings later, I'll say, you know what, I should probably just really contemplate or meditate on that.
Yeah, good point. So for me, my perspective, I guess, challenge has been that I can get very caught up in or distracted by the turbulence in the world.
Mm.
And whether that is seeing, things that are occurring and I'm not even looking for it, right? We're not the type of household where we turn on the news in the morning and we're just trying to learn that. Like when we're wanting to catch up on like world events, we will intentionally go spend a couple minutes and look up what feels relevant to look up. So we're not usually letting all that input just come in at any time. But it will just come out of nowhere, whether it's someone sending it in a text or they bring it up at a party or it's randomly showing up on my feed. My nervous system has been getting really sensitive to just that, the turbulence and the tragedy in the world in many different domains. I don't even want to list them specifically. But then how that affects me is because my nervous system gets dysregulated, I feel a little bit like fearful in fight or flight. I then am not as present in the moment at home, whether that be with Sky or with you. I might even be a little bit more reactive. So the win, though, is that we have every year, I felt like, been more and more committed to emotional regulation and recognizing when we aren't regulated and what do we need to do to regulate ourselves? And you and I communicating if we need little breaks, to just go spend a little bit of alone time, or we need to talk and have a moment, before our daughter wakes up to just like, vent to each other or talk about something or process something. And so I feel like we've been supporting each other in that. But even individually, me, and even more so at the end of the year, I'm saying, you know what? I am really going to be vigilant about what I let into my consciousness and into my awareness and where I want to put my attention. Doesn't mean I'm going to be ignorant. Doesn't mean I'm like just going to tap out of the world, but I really want to be cognizant of our world that we're creating, our family world, and the majority, by far the majority of the attention being on that, on us, our world, our family, what we're creating, our life. And then of course that doesn't mean we can't be of service to the world and help where we feel that we can, but it really can affect my nervous system and therefore my presence. So the win has been more and more even just towards, like I said, the end of the year and the stand I'm taking for myself, and that I'm going to be even more like focused on our world and what I'm allowing in my consciousness.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So moving to the next one is a personal one. And for those that have reached a certain milestone that I'm about to share right now, that I'm turning 40 in March of 2025.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just more common. I think probably thinking back to people that when I was younger was at the age I am now, probably this is no new news for someone that's turning 40. The years 38 and 39, I did find for myself, all relative to where I've been in the past. I mean, very low body fat percentage, very fast, athletic, strong, at different seasons too. 38 and 39 were definitely my worst fitness years. But as I thought about becoming 40, that was something I didn't want to just have go that predictable way. What I found was interesting though. In the past, I've been able to have some extra lazy and treat days, extra desserts. And the way I would phrase it is I could easily cancel out a negative treat day with basically one hard workout, whether it was with weights or long, fast, increased pace run.
Mm-hmm.
That would pretty much balance out 1-to-1.
Mm-hmm.
I found that this year it's like 1-to-5. And I was surprised. I was really surprised I have a treat day, then I won't go into the specifics, like just how I feel in my core was a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that I could go to the gym the next day and feel better. It really took like 5 days at the gym, being more clean with my eating to then negate that treat day.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's been very interesting. I think the overall win here for me is that, and I've hit PRs. I set a benchmark for a 1.5 mile run, and over the last couple of months, got to a pace that I've never been at. It also led me to this whole thing about how I've been breathing. I've been having some like throat issues, and I'm finding this is all from being a mouth breather and how I sleep and not breathing through my nose as well, and strength of different muscles in my face. Like, it's crazy that it brought me to this. And I think it's just really in the nick of time, in a sense, for the age I am and where I'm going. I just think that a lot of health things are being brought to the surface that I'm more willing to try. I like blood panels and toxicity panels and varying things for health. And I just am very appreciative that it didn't take me a huge backslide. I just, wasn't as fit as I was, and that was enough for me to get into this new mindset and not just think it was always going to be the same. And I'm just really appreciative of the journey I'm now on.
Yes, I love that. And I'm really glad you are prioritizing your health. And I would echo everything you're saying about just really wanting to intentionally, my phrase is, I want to age gracefully, right? And so it is very top of mind for both of us, but I don't want to be redundant. So for me, I think a big personal breakthrough has actually been with generosity. And so just quick backstory, like I grew up and my parents didn't have a lot of money, like many of us can relate to, but it got even worse when they got divorced. And I'm talking, at times needing food stamps. I'm talking wishing I could get some new clothes and couldn't always, keep up with what was popular. And I would compare myself to the kids who at the time, it was like Abercrombie was popular, and I couldn't, I got like 1 or 2 items, right, in like a year or so. So anyway, again, doesn't mean I wasn't taken care of. Like, and I am grateful for what we had, but there was still a comparison. And I grew up feeling a lot of scarcity. And really, no one in my family proved to me what it was look like to have abundance, financial abundance. Now, because I'm so grateful of the breakthroughs that our mission and our way of serving couples has expanded, right, and allowed us to feel more financial peace, I feel that my true nature, my generosity that I never really got to experience before. Like, I always felt as though, like, well, if I give to that person, I lose, right? Like, that was the scarcity mindset I had. And so I would hold back. Like, I would want to give amazing gifts to people, but feel like, oh no, like I would contract, like, oh no, I can't, right? So now I have gotten to experience my generous self, whether that is just little extra gifts for friends or their kids. A friend had a daughter who hurt her leg, and just, let's go get her some, pick me up gifts. I never would have felt like I could do that in the past. Or with holidays, just more generosity, or being able to help, family members that need some additional assistance, taking people to dinner and paying, and it being like a really nice dinner. And that has been truly amazing to experience, that generosity trait in myself that I never really got to experience. So I'm really grateful for that. And that's a breakthrough. And it's something I want to continue to feel. And and generosity, even just in giving, and to other families in need that we don't even know, buying toys for kids through the organization that our church helps. And so I want more of that. I'm excited for more of that. And yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm on board for that too. That was really nice. I think that comes about for the holiday season, but we're committed to having that go on throughout the year, not just for the holiday. So let's move into the third category here, parenting. And our daughter turned 3 a couple of days ago.
Yep.
Funny enough, And it's been so great. I've loved to see her development. She's such a little personality and person. In the first half, maybe even 3/4 of two. So from 2 to 2.5 to 2 3/4, really just pretty easy, I would say. This is just for me.
Mm-hmm.
And you hear that old adage. I know it's not necessarily true, but the terrible twos.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, that doesn't really seem like the case. It has been more challenging from the second half or the fourth quarter, if you will, from the 2 to 3.
Yeah. Closer to 3, the closer to 3. Mm-hmm.
So she has become more set on how and when she wants to do things.
Mm-hmm.
There are these waves where she's like really on team dad.
Mm.
And then there are these waves where she's really not and she's, wanting you more. Maybe that's the challenge you're going to share. I'm not sure. And there's been the back and forth. And I think I've been semi okay with that. It's like, I mean, yeah, she's a little girl and you're probably going to have that. There's times I feel a little sad because she'll say like, well, I don't want you or get away. Even with that, we said, well, okay, say, hey, that you just want space.
Mm-hmm.
That's been kind of a fun little shift. But what has really come from that is I can recognize, and it's not always right away. So it takes a few days. If I notice that's happening, then what I notice and the win is, and you know it now too, that just means that I need more time with her on my own.
Mm.
And when I do that, and we have come up with these imaginary games where we do the same where we play camping and like we build this fire. And she has so much fun in that. And it's like such a memory that I could see just really cements for her that, for example, one of her grandpas was here and was putting her to bed one night. And we're like, oh, how did that go? He said, oh, she wanted to do this camping thing with me and put these cards out and it was a fire. And I'm like, I knew that was because I had done that with her. So she's even seeing these games and wanting to play them with other people that might have seemed random to him. And even just our outings where we get ice cream together. And then just unrelated, like a week later, she'll just be wanting to spend more time with me. Or again, she'll mention like, hey, I just want to get ice cream with dad, or I want to do this imaginary game with dad only. So that has been a big win for me. And just seeing that I'm building a good friendship with her. Obviously, we provide the guidance and the structure. I think one of the things that was really hard is not like the amount that she would say no, especially in the car, like over and over, and the volume.
Yeah,
it's like, how
loud.
do we get this to stop? How do we like redirect? And like redirecting is not working. So yeah, that part has been hard. And then again, the wins out of that is just to see the time I do spend with her does make a difference. If not right away, it obviously shows up as something that was really meaningful to her.
Yeah. I love that you're just a thoughtful, intentional dad too. So I'm just going to keep expressing my gratitude for you because appreciation's a big focus right now.
Especially for the Best of Us challenge.
Yes. There's appreciation gestures as one of the type of prompts. So it's a big, big theme right now that's important. So for me, Mira, on parenting, again, I'm trying not to be redundant to what you shared because I also relate to what you're saying just with the personality development, her brain, I hope most of us know, if not, like really learn about this, but they aren't meant to know how to regulate their emotions yet. Like that isn't online. And the parts of our brain that like mature, thinking of an adult isn't complete till 25, you guys. So we need to put into perspective that we are meant to teach them. They're not meant to already have it. And that's also a challenging role because what does that mean? That means we need to be the steady ground for them to learn. We need to regulate ourselves when they can't regulate themselves. So that's just a little bit soapbox moment. And in real time, it is challenging. So I definitely catch myself at times being like, wow, she is like what feels like to me not being nice to me. How do I model for her what to do in this moment? And that is challenging. And so then it will somewhat, deplete some of my reserves. And then the ripple effect, right, can be how I show up for you. And so again, like that's why it's so important to be able to make sure we are putting some time, some energy, some thought into how we're showing up for our partner, especially as parents, because we're giving so much to them, to teach them, to support them, to provide for them. So I think the win, if I were to just say, is that I just feel like we have such a good relationship. And I see her heart. I see that we are even little things that I feel like we're teaching her. I want to see if I can think of some where she'll repeat, but we're really trying to teach her traits like around kindness, thoughtfulness. And
Well, I
so,
think even
mhm,
her, instead of saying like, I don't want you here,
yeah.
saying she does now say like, I need space.
Yes. So, right, redirecting. We want to teach her to ask for what she needs.
Mm.
So, I'll even redirect her and say, hey, tell me what you need, because that's also important in romantic relationships too. So, I think the win is just that we continue to do the best that we can and that we're really like helping her develop into this aware, intentional, conscious, resilient child, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we still have a long way to go, but I feel like we're doing a decent job.
Yeah. So let's, I guess, move to the last one here, being the partnership dynamic. And we haven't talked about this one.
Okay. Ooh,
So we'll see how
surprise
this
for me.
goes live. So the dynamic for me, and we do a coaching principle on sessions called the conflict cycle, which has a couple reveal what are the core fears and core reactions that are at the cause of the cycle, right? It's not the subject usually, because the subject is related to an unmet need. I'm kind of giving the whole
Yeah.
principle, right? But if you could just get to the unmet need, you would just circumvent the whole cycle. But we don't do that. Our brains connect to the fear or the protection. And for me, I realized that the fear that can come up is it's a trigger. It's about unfairness. And so when I perceive there's a situation that is unfair, then that will bring up frustration and defense for me. And I think one of the things that I've noticed is a fine line between being assertive about that and having that conversation with you, or kind of sitting on it. And I know I talk about silent tolerance and, just reflect on an issue that you have or a trigger you have for yourself. And if it comes up a third time, that's your moment to be assertive and bring it up. And I think for us in the season of our mission with marriages, with parenting, and we don't have like a lot of conflicts, so I hold it in and like consider it, but then it's not really the time to bring it up, right? So assertiveness and being, is this the proper thing to bring up? And lately, I would say I am not bringing it up because it's like, well, I don't need to. This is a common thing we see in marriages. Well, most of the time they're not sharing it at all, and they don't want to cause a conflict. But for me, it's these preferences that I notice around the house. There's also, and I've kind of come to terms with that a bit.
And by the way, he has more strict
Yeah.
preferences than me, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
not the other way around.
But then the other thing to get more real is in the communication and in discussing higher tension moments and conflict, where my perception goes of the dynamic is that, hey, this is unfair because I myself implement what we teach. I'm not saying that you don't, but in the moment, I think to myself, I'm doing a better job than you are. And this is unfair that I have to be the one that listens, that understands, that moves us through the 5R process. And that's just an example of, well, this isn't fair. Why do I have to be the one to use the skills, to be that level of listener? And then obviously that the preferences around the house, I think I've managed a little bit better. But in both cases, there tended to be a trend in 24 for me of this comparison and then the trigger of unfairness, which then caused reactions of frustration and then defensiveness.
So what's the win?
Oh yeah, I hadn't really thought this one through. I think similar to my first one on the perspective, I think this is awareness through 24, and then maybe this is bringing it into 25 to see what the real win is. Because I think the win for me was mostly about maintaining what I knew to do, to listen, to allow you to express. And I think I maintained that. I think I made changes to patterns that you had asked of me. The unfairness part is that I don't feel as much was reciprocated from what I asked for. But the first win is I still stayed committed to the things I knew I needed to do. And then the second part, I think, is more about a recognition of acceptance, which we've talked about. I can be a little bit more assertive. I think I can bring some of the conversations forward prior to there being an upset. And then I think there's a level of, once we get there, as we've talked about PSA, perspective skills, acceptance, more in the realm of just accepting. We've been together now, well, almost married 10 years. And so I think that's going to be a key win to start 25 is an acceptance more of our differences, of our preferences and styles.
But what I'm hearing you say is
okay, good.
that I can work on giving you my listening as well when we're working through something we're not seeing eye to eye on, or we both had a certain negative experience in a certain interaction or situation. And you have been doing a great job of listening to me. And you're right. I could do a better job of acknowledging, okay, you listen to me, now let me listen to you. So I'm taking it on.
Wow.
I hear you.
Already a change there. There you go.
Okay. I love that. It's real-time coaching, right?
Yeah.
This is real-time relationship stuff. Okay, so for me, I would say that one of the challenges would be, and I don't know, I couldn't really tell you a timeline on if this is just this year or it's existed before, but I'll just stick with now, is that I could, if we had a negative interaction, which we have, we talk about it on the podcast, we do a really good job of keeping our agreements for times of conflict, not letting them escalate to do damage, but we still get frustrated. We still get annoyed. We still feel unheard at times, right? And so what I've struggled with at times is being able to bounce back from that and to kind of not the way I envision it is like go into a turtle shell afterwards of like, oh, that was such a frustrating negative interaction. Let me just kind of like go into a turtle shell, and it's going to take me some time to shift my energy back to being connected. Now, of course, that's natural, right? No, I don't think anyone is expecting you to go from frustrating interaction to 5 seconds later be laughing and flirting again. However, I think a lot of us can let it drag on too long. It can then sabotage your whole afternoon. The next morning, you can wake up grumpy and distant, and it just drags on. And so I think that as we have our repair conversations, I've been doing a better job at shifting my energy quicker than what it was, back to being playful, being interactive. So a quick example yesterday.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's right.
So I'll just kind of do like the highlights of what's important to know. I came back from just doing a little self-care outing, and his parents are in town. So we wanted to take our daughter outside and all play, some different sports out on the lawn. And there was this quick kind of scary interaction with another dog that was out there, and Aaron was, worried about it. And then we just had some tension about it. We didn't see eye to eye on how to handle that dog situation. So, we had a couple things back and forth that we said to each other. Again, we don't let it get out of hand. But it was annoying. It was frustrating. And my body felt like it wanted to be like, I'm going to just be grumpy for the next hour then. And
at one point, and this was shorter, but your back was turned to me. I don't know if you noticed.
For a minute, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know what though? In this moment, I have an opportunity to get back to what could be a really nice moment of playing with our daughter, my in-laws, my husband. It's a beautiful day. We could be just loving our time on the grass, kicking balls, throwing balls, all the things. And I was like, so am I going to get on board with that moment, or am I going to just stay frustrated and distant?
If you weren't going to mention this, I was already thinking this right before you said it.
Good.
And that was in my recent memory. It was the fastest that you had shifted that I can recall.
Okay, good.
It was so good.
But take that as a listener for yourself. Like really do an audit on terms of, for the somewhat little things. Like we're not talking about like you had this massive blow up and lots of things are said and there's underlying issues you need to address that you should just bounce back. But we're talking about just those interactions that come up that are frustrating, annoying, you don't see eye to eye. Can you bounce back faster? What does that look like for you to shift your energy so that you aren't losing out on a great day or a great moment, and be able to shift that energy with each other? So I think that's definitely a muscle to strengthen. And I ask myself, how much life am I willing to give up for this? For whatever this being right, or, feeling as though I'm justified to be frustrated. How much life am I willing to give up? Because we don't know how much we have. So use that as a perspective shift in the moment.
And so let me do one thing to conclude this, to go back to the original context. You just have to understand, and I'm becoming more and more confident that this is one of the fundamental things for marriage. It's about your adaptive processes. It's about the evolution of you as an individual. You just can't be the same. You can't do the same things. And it's obvious when you look at your health or your finances or your business, your work, your parenting, but it's time for us to look at marriage. You can't be the same because the seasons of your life are different. The needs of your partner, the needs of yourself are also evolving based on life circumstances, based on age, based on your openness to conversations, based on all of it. And you just have to start to look for yourself and say, how well have I been adapting my own processes for dealing with life events? And then are these helping or hurting the marriage? And then you have to take that ownership for yourself, regardless of what your partner is doing, and move forward. Then, as a team, you come together and have a similar conversation. Obviously, it's good that you express what you see for yourself, the patterns, take responsibility, clean up what you need to clean up, both do that with each other, and then say, okay, yes, and for our season ahead, what we want out of the next year, where we see our kids' lives going, what do we need to change in our own life to fit this new vision? Or if it's not even a vision, things are going to change anyway. So are we staying on top of the evolution of ourselves in a marriage to keep up with where life is going? Literally, if you don't do this, you just get left behind. And then your partner feels
like they're dragging you.
And I think, again, the big, takeaway from all this is me really thinking through that framework of a couple is either in dysfunction, function, or closeness. And that's an adaptive process in and of itself. You're going to probably go through each of those phases. You have to know the steps to take to cross each of those bridges. You can't stay in dysfunction. You will literally burn your cells, your nervous system, your satisfaction. It will go down to zero if you don't move into function. And function, you can't stay there too long either, because that's just boredom, routine, your roommates. So you have to be taking the adaptive steps and using the skills to move to closeness. And even with that, closeness doesn't always look the same. So that's what I'm really taking away. 2024 showed me that high level principle, and hopefully what you take away from our individual shares of our challenges and wins, that ultimately, if I could gift you that, the listener, you understand that that's a part of the marriage evolution, those 3 states, and it's not always the same, then I think this is a great takeaway for all of us from 24.
I'm fired up. My head, I'm nodding. I'm like, yeah, I'm fired up by what you're saying. And just to add to what Aaron is saying in closing, let this transition from one year to the next be a true intentional shift, not by accident. And let this be this conversation that we want you to have, a conversation about all 4 of the categories we just put out there, to be asking yourselves, how can we be even better partners for each other? How can we bring out the best in each other and our relationship? Because there's something that has you together. There's a reason you fell in love. There's a reason you chose to build a life together. And maybe you've gotten off track being able to bring out that greatness in each other and your relationship. So we hope you have a great conversation about this. Please do not miss out on the Best of Us Couples Challenge. Like we said, it's only available for January. We're closing it the rest of the year, and it won't be open until January next year in 2026. So go to mycoupleschallenge.com/best. You're going to love the prompts. There's intimacy activities, connection prompts, and appreciation gestures.
Mm.
But you can read it all at the webpage, so make sure you go there. The link will also be in the show notes. But Happy New Year, everyone. We truly want the best for you. We want this to be your best year yet. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you can hear past and future episodes. And if you've been a listener and you take away value, it helps us so much if you give us a rating on the platform. Hopefully you feel it's worthy hitting that 5 stars. That helps us a lot. But with that, you guys, we will talk to you next year.